All right, hello everybody. So this is my response to your fourth homework. So generally, again, I think it went pretty fine for many people, but there are also some things that you might not have understood exactly the way I wanted you to understand them, or some people had some difficulties. So I decided I will go through all the exercises and give you some ideas about what was the exercise about, or what I expected you to kind of learn from that exercise. So, right, hopefully you're now seeing my screen. So, first exercise, I think pretty easy. Create 4 lists. There were no problems there. Some people made only 3 lists. All right, not a big issue. So, in the second exercise, you were supposed to create a list of lists. So pretty much as we've learned, in a list, you can put any kind of other object. So we just put a list and we put lists as other objects. Now, some of you come up with this idea of using a zip function. So that was a mistake here. Actually, it does not do what you want it to do. So let me just run the code. Okay. Anyway, I will need it later. So I run the first one, and this one I don't need to run. Or yeah, let me run it, and let me show you what we get here. So here we get the shopping lists. So you see now it prints out nicely the shopping list exactly as we entered them in. Now let's do this one. And now you see a big difference, right? I mean, not just, we could say, okay, I mean, here are the square braces, here are the round braces, and that seems like, no, not a big difference, but actually it is a big difference, because then it shows that it's a different object. But also look at what's in those lists. So here we have bread, milk, flour. Here we have 4 lists of 3 items, and here we have 3 lists of 4 items, right? And if you carefully take a look at it, so this first one here, it says bread, hay, shoes, wood. Well, those are the first ones from from all of the lists. And here we have milk, carrot, belt, nails. Those are the ones from the second items from all of the lists. And so that's exactly what the zip function does. So I recommend you to look it up. I mean, zip function is is a quite useful function. And what zip function mainly is used for is for iterating through objects. So iterating, if you remember, we have now in this class, or in the previous class, we learned the for loop, right? For iterating through a list. I want to go through a list. So I say for item in list, print item, for example. And that's how I go through the items of the list. But sometimes you have several lists and you want to go through all of them at the same time. I mean, you want to create this kind of thing like what happened here, right? You would want to go through all of the lists, all of these 4 lists at the same time, and always pick up the first entry, and then pick up the second entry and the third entry. And this is how a zip function works. So here is a nice example taken from the internet. So let's have 2 lists. One is names, the other one has ages. And now you see here we do a for loop for name and age in. And now how would you do that, right? If you wanted to go just through the names, you would have to go for name in names. If you wanted to do just age, you would go for age in ages. But how to do it if we want to go through both lists at the same time? And we don't want to be creating, how do we cannot merge the lists. I mean, we cannot put them after. We need them sort of like side by side. We want to go through the lists, right, at the same time. So this is what this zip function is very nice for. So it zips them, like, I mean, a zip is like a zipper, like on your jacket, right? It puts the little pieces regularly from each side one, and connects them. And this is what it does. Or cars, they do, we call it a zip line, right? When the cars are going one after the other, here they are going at the same time. So here, this is what it does. It creates an object where you have always the first item from first list and the first item from a second list as a pair together. So you got these pairs, right? Alice 24, Bob 50, Charlie 18. So this is really useful for iteration. So it's good that it come up here. It might help you in future. Take a look into the zip function, but definitely here it was wrong to use a zip function. I mean, as you can see, it gave you, anyway, sometimes even if it worked, I mean, it did what, like you could think, okay, it was necessary, but it was not a mistake. It was a mistake here because it gives you completely different output than what we've wanted. All right, then copying lists. I mean, we talked about it already during the class time. So Python is object oriented programming language. So you have to think about there this everything is an object. Like think about it like as a physical object. And so, but in the computer, lots of times what you're using are pointers, means you're just using arrows that they are pointing towards the physical objects. And what you're doing is you're sort of just calling there, looking there, and then, you know, like working, you're not working with the actual pointer, but when you're modifying the actual objects. And so for this reason, it's important to understand this idea of copying, that if you want to have a new object, you really need to make a copy, like make a physical copy, not just to copy the pointer. Because if you have two different pointers that point to the same object, then whenever you do some change through either of those pointers, that one physical object is going to get changed. And so that means that now you have, again, two pointers. The pointers are different, but they're pointing to the same object, which has been now changed, which is a problem. So in the case of list, you can use this copy function that creates a new physical object somewhere in the computer. If before you had there one piece of something, one list, right? Now it created somewhere else on the hard drive, it made another list. It's a copy. They look the same, the content is the same, but they have different physical addresses. So now if you change one, the other is going to change. It's going to stay unchanged. And this is very important. Here's a link for another. There are other ways how to copy list. The easiest one, I think, is usually this copy. All right. Then looping list. So I think the standard from last class, just for, so, and yeah, and so this question says for loop to print all shopping lists. So if we want to, so we have a big list of all shopping lists. So we go for a shop list in, this is all of the shopping lists. Then what we're going to get, okay, I didn't do the copying, right? So this object doesn't exist. So I go back, I run this, and I can rerun this. And now I get the, now I get those lists, right? And okay, and now I have it all wrong, right? Because I did run this code. So you see, this is this nice example of, because you're running the code one after another, and I rewrote. So you see here, I created shopping lists like this, but then I took that pointer and I pointed it somewhere else, and now it's pointing where I don't want it. So I need to rerun this one. Okay, now I got this list of shopping lists, and now if I iterate through that list, it's gonna give me, no, sorry. And again, I need to do the copying of that. Copy it. And now it's going to give me exactly the, now the shopping lists 2 contains as items, those 4 different shopping lists. And now I run through them and I go through each item and I print each of it. Now, what if I wanted not this, not the shopping list, but I wanted to print exactly each of these entries. So now we have this nested list, right? We have a list of shopping lists. So each item in the list is again a list, and I need to get inside of it. So for that, a simple way, if you want to iterate through this, is like the code here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the shopping lists in my list, right? The same code as here. But now instead of printing that shopping list, I'm going to iterate through each of these lists. So I go for item in each of the shop list, print them out, and that's now I get all the items here, right? So we have a outer big loop. The first loop, it goes through the items of the big list, and then every time it picks up one of these items, Then we make an inner loop, which now, because this item is a list itself, we run through that list. Okay, and this is what we call nested lists. All right, now modifying lists. So this exactly is to show you this issue with using the pointers, or why do you need to use copy. And so now here we want to do the change the value at index 2 and 3. So first, so how do we do that? So here the important thing is, if you change, so some of you, what you did is you wrote, you knew what was the item in the shopping list, and you would just put there like fixed. But oftentimes we don't know what is there. So in this exercise, right, let's say we don't know what are those entries, and this is how it generally is. So your code should not, this code should not contain any fixed, like, define shopping lists 2 as, and now here write the actual shopping list. No. So you're exchanging two items in the list. So now imagine that, okay, so I could do this piece of code. I could do shopping lists 2 equals what shopping lists 3, and that would copy shopping list what is on the position 3 into the position 2, and that's fine. But now what it did, it deleted what was in the position 2, and now there's no way to get to it. I mean, you've lost it, you've lost the pointer. I mean, it's probably still there somewhere in the computer, but you've lost it, the access to it. So that's why we use this, what we call a temporary variable or temporary storage. Typically people you call the variable temp, but you can call it whatever you want. So what first I do is I copy what I would lose. I copy that into the temporary variable. Then I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy 3 into 2. And now I'm going to copy into the 3 what was originally in the 2. Yeah. So if I didn't do this step, by this, I would lose the value in 2 and I would not be able to recover it. All right. Okay. And now you can see that the second list, it changed, but the original list didn't, because we used the copy function. If we did not do the copy here, if we just wrote shopping lists 2 equals shopping lists, then it would be just, we would just have a new pointer pointing to the same thing, and you would get exactly, both lists would have changed. All right. So now again, modifying. So here we were modifying basically the entries in the list, right? There was a second. So what we did was we changed the third and fourth shopping list. Now, what if we want to change the value in the nested list, right? Again, we have a list of lists, and what do we want to change that one value that is inside? Well, it's pretty simple. So we choose the list we want to go into. So that's the one with the index 2. And that is, again, is a list. It has 4 values. So if we want to choose the second value, so that has index 1. So we just write here, and now we are inside. Now like this, we looped, right? This make me point into the big list onto the item number 3. And if I add this here, and that itself is a list, so I can again add here this, and that now points onto the second item in that list. And if it was another list again, and it was this, so you can add more and more and more and more. You just have to realize that the way you write it, right, you're adding the numbers from the indices from the left, right? As you're looping in, you're going from outside in, not from inside out. All right. And so now this changes the right, the item here, right? Okay. Here we add just a new list. So here we're using this function append. So if you have a list, you can just append another value into the list. Just add it. It puts it at the end. That's one easy way how to do it. Another way is what if we have two lists, how we put them together. So there are many different ways how to put lists together. So for example, if we have these two lists, month 1 and month 2, and now we want to add them together. So we can create completely new list, and that is the concatenation sum, basically what it means, of the two previous lists. And you can use just this function. I mean, you can use the symbol here plus for lists. This, what it does, it just create a new list with entries from both of these lists together. So that's one way. And another way is that, so here you see we created, I mean, because I didn't want to change the lists month 1 and month 2. So here I create a new list, all months, like this. So it's another way. Instead of doing copy, you can just do this. You can write it as I create a new list. And now what I did is I iterate through the second list, and I'm adding the entries one by one. So I can do the append. Like here I did the append. So here I do it. I do exactly the same thing here, but because I'm appending content of another list, so I need to go through that list first, and I'm adding them one by one, right? Here I put it all together, and that created a new list. Here, if you the difference is that here this list now is already set, it has something, and I'm just adding to it. So I'm not creating new lists, I'm just adding stuff to already existing list. Another way is that you can use function extend. So again, I have an existing list, and I use this function extend, and so that what it does, it takes the other list and it puts it at the end of the previous one. So again, the difference, for example, one of the differences between this one and this one is that here we are not creating a new list. Again, existing list, and we are adding a list to it at the end. Basically, this does exactly the same as this code here, right? But it's just, well, it's a bit easier, and then you can have the function, some built-in function. You can look it up how it's built. Maybe it's actually written exactly like this piece of code, or maybe it has some kind of other parameters you can play with, right? And so then there was this second part of the question: put the lists of all the months in the right order using the function sorted. So some people, they did this they didn't use sorted, and well, so let's say it's a mistake at this point, because I wrote here specifically use the sorted function. Sure, there are other ways how to do it, but I wanted you to use the sorted function. So if you didn't, it's a mistake, right? Because basically, right, in all the exercises, really the idea is not that I want you to solve a problem. I mean, these are so primitive problems. These are easy problems, and so the idea is not for you to solve the actual problem. I mean, the solutions are out there, and everybody can find them easily. The point is that I want you to learn something while solving the problem. So sometimes solving the problem in whichever way is the learning. You know, figuring out how do I solve something. Sometimes it's I want you to go a specific way to stumble onto things, to get into errors, to get into problems, to realize how the thing actually works. So, like I said, not a big mistake, but in future, pay attention to it. And if I say here, use function sorted, use it, even though you know much better way how to do it. But the point is not about doing it the most efficient way, maybe at that point, but to find out to learn what might be the trouble with the sorted function. So anyway, so once you use this function, all right, let me run the code. Okay, I didn't run this. So it's a lot. All right, so here I have lots of outputs, but let's take a look at this output, right? So if I just use sorted all months, and again, you see I put it in this temp variable because I didn't want to change the all months, right? Because actually, if you would just run I didn't want to sort it in the house, what is called. Yeah. So that's another thing, right? If you're using all sorts of sorting functions, and again, that's a function that modifies the list, and you have two options. Either you modify the original list, or you create a new modified list. And again, depending on your application, sometimes you often do not want to modify the original data, because the original data, you're borrowing it from someone, and you're going to be doing all sorts of different functions, and you don't want to do them at the same time. You want to, for example, compare the results. Did this work better than this work? So oftentimes you really want to create new new lists. Sometimes you don't, right? Let's say you have a database of all your music in your computer. Every time you do something with it, like you do some sorting or changes in names and stuff, you probably want to you will use only the database, the new one after, and you will never go to the old one. So in that case, you want to do it in the house, the change in the object itself. But in research, oftentimes we don't want to change the original data, because maybe, like I said, you might want to use it in different ways. You actually might not have access. You might not be able to change the original data, right? You need to store them, and then you need to copy them for yourself. And and then you get some error, and then you want to compare. You want to see what happened to the original. You want to compare with the original data. So again, this is important. And so now here, what we can see, what happened here is, so I did the sorting, and well, it sort of worked, right? I mean, here it goes January, February, March, and so on. But look, it starts with the October, right? So what's the problem here? Well, the problem here is that this sorting function, right? These are all strings. In strings, the strings are made of individual characters. And there is a given order of individual characters, like you have alphabet, right? A, B, C, D, E. So it uses the alphabetical order, and numbers have the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And so this sorted function, now we realize what it does. It sorts always first by the first character, then by the second character. So it goes or checks all the first characters, and well, they are all numbers, but the smallest number is 1. So first will be the ones with the ones, and then with 2, with 3, with 4, and so on. And now these all start with 1. So, but this still needs to be sorted, right? It could be now random. It could be now January, November, December, October, or whatever. So then it goes to the second character. Now the second character here is 0, here is 1, here is 2, and here is this underscore, which personally, I don't know, but it's, it's definitely somewhere after the numbers. I don't know, probably it would be even after alphabet or something. That's not really that important at this point. But so you see, it sorted it by 0, 1, 2. Okay. So anyway, so now we understand, now we see, oh, this sorted function, I mean, it's good. It sorts stuff, but now the point here that I'm trying to show you is that, yeah, the sorted is a function. It's a built-in function, so it's great. It's very easy piece of code to use it, but you have to be careful. Do you really know what's the inner functioning of that function? How did someone wrote the code? Because it's a sorting function, and again, different programmers, different people may have a different idea how to sort things, right? Maybe if I was writing a sorting function, maybe for me, if I were sorting things, first maybe I would go with alphabet and then with numbers, right? I mean, who's to say that first should be numbers and then alphabet, or in some completely different way? So this is an important thing to understand. Whenever you're using any kind of these pre-made functions, you really need to read the explanation file. Best is on the web page of Python, where it's explained how that function works, or at least to play with it. If it's for the first time you see it, play with it by yourself to see how that function works, so you really get out of it, or you use it in a proper way for your use. I mean, basically these functions, they are black boxes. If I just sort it, I mean, there's thousands of different ways how you can go about sorting things, putting them in different orders. So be careful about that. If you don't know the function, if you're using it especially for the first time, then look at the manual to understand how it works, so you use it properly. And so then I told you, okay, so then then fix the thing. So now here you have a complete freedom how to do it. Though again, I would want you. I mean, I said to use the function sorry, but here it doesn't matter. So, and again, this is just like a one-time problem. So here there was no need to create any kind of complicated general solution, because I mean, anyway, each list might be different and stuff. So here I just sliced this, right? I mean, I see that it sorted these first and these after. So I just cut this into two halves and I just switched it over. But I mean, any kind of solution that did anything was fine. On the other hand, like your approach, if generally speaking, if for example you would say, okay, if I put here this, instead of 1 I put 0, 1 instead of 2 put I 0. If I put the zeros, then it would sort it fine. It's fine, yeah. And that's why, I mean, that's why oftentimes in computers files are named like that, so it doesn't has a problem with the sorting. As a solution here, okay, I didn't put your points down or anything, but I think it would be it's not a good solution, because what that does is you are changing the names of the months here, and I didn't say here that you can do that. And again, that's something that probably you don't want to do, right? Especially, I mean, this is not your list. This is a list that your client gave you, and I mean, first you should ask if it's fine. I mean, if it's for you and you're just figuring out how to do this, sure, you can use whatever. But if it's somebody gave it to you and you're just supposed to work with it, it just says put them in the order. So that doesn't, I would say that imply, I mean, just changing them is a bit of it's a questionable thing. All right, and the last exercise, modifying lists. So here, this is to practice this pop function or pop method. So yeah, so what you can do is you can go through a list, and you can put out exactly a value on certain place, and this pop function also, it copies it. So it doesn't, not only that it cuts it out, it throws it out of the list, but it also stores it. So that's kind of a useful thing, right? Sometimes you want to put some stuff out of the list, but you also want to keep track of what did you put out. So in that case, this pop function is quite useful. And again, so for all of these exercises, or for the list, there is so many different functions, and there is different ways how to do exactly the same thing. And it then depends on the programmer what they like. So here is just some kind of a basic list of what I think is useful for you to know at this point. But if you find different method, different way works better for you, or depending on the problem works better, definitely look into it, look into the manual of Python, look into the discussions. I mean, this is really great. If you're not really sure how this works, I just put it in the Google, and then you get somebody ask on a Stack Overflow, and then people like, how do I solve this problem? And then there is tens of answers usually, and people do have different approaches how to solve things. And so that's what you have to read, look through, and and learn. All right, so I hope this was helpful for some of those who had mistakes in the homework. Okay, thank you, and see you at the next class.